That's fucking minging, that.
I tell you what that is, fucking men against fucking boys all over the fucking park. They're fucking weak as piss, they are. Fucking weak as piss.
Hello and welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT Player Ratings podcast. It's Craig, Malc and Bomber bringing you our immediate thoughts to Sunderland's 3-1 home defeat against Portsmouth. Bomber, let's get stuck straight in. Besides a 5 to 10 minute spell at the start of that second half, we were pretty much second best all afternoon. Was that just a bad day at the office, do you think, or is this been coming?
I don't think the defensive display's been coming. You know, defensively we've been as good as I've seen us in God knows how long. So that was a surprise to see the two goals that we gave away. We gave away so kind of casually and sloppily. That was a surprise. I wasn't surprised to see us struggle to create an awful lot. I think the equaliser came obviously just after they scored, and it almost came a little bit out of nowhere. But yeah, it's a bit of both. I think for me, I was definitely surprised to see us so poor defensively, but it was more of the same pretty much going forward for me.
Yeah, I think that's the first time that we've come up against a side pretty much of that quality so far this season who had an answer really fair for absolutely everything. They pressed us, they got in our faces, and they really did prove a difficult challenge from the offset. Malcolm, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would concur with what's been said. You know, they worked us out, you know, and the biggest concern for me is this happened last January, February after Phil got manager of the month. People worked us out, and you know, there's been a lot of chat on the WhatsApp and stuff like that about where's the plan B, and that's my concern, because, you know, we had a very similar bench. We didn't turn up, you know, you could argue if we hadn't given them 2 goals away and we'd scored that one that Charlie tapped in at the front post, then it might have been another 1-0, but we didn't get off the bus, you know, so yeah, we were outperformed and they deserve to win the game, but it needs to be something we definitely learn from.
Do you have much confidence that Phil Parkinson can drill that message home that we're not going to sort of repeat history in terms of, you know, kind of form going to the wall? We really were a shadow of what we've been so far this season, but do you have confidence that we'll be able to get back into it on Tuesday?
We've got to bounce quick, that's the thing. We've got to, you know, wipe ourselves down, recognise on the day we weren't as good as we can be, and we've got to get straight back on the bike that we just fell off and skinned our knees on. My concern is the depth in tactical options from the manager as much as the capability of the players, because, you know, you need to have options, and today, once we went behind, we were very limited in what we could do.
We'll touch on the options now, as you've mentioned. Were either of you surprised with the team selection? That's 3 games in a week. There hasn't been much rotation, besides obviously Jordan Willis coming back into the side today. Were you surprised that perhaps, you know, the same figures have featured so prominently? I know Luke O'Nine's coming for a lot of criticism on the socials, but you think if you have somebody like Tom Flanagan waiting in the ranks that you would perhaps put him back into position rather than playing Luke O'Nine out of position?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a surprise. I would have preferred to have seen Luke go back out onto the right and Flanagan come back in. You know, we could all see that it was arguably the toughest game of the season so far. Portsmouth are probably the best side that we'll have come up against so far. So why we insist on, or why Parkinson's insisted on the continuing trial of Luke O'Nine at left centre back when we've got a fit and specialist centre back there, and it means that we can push Luke back out onto the right hand side where he has become so natural. So that was a surprise for me. I wasn't surprised that there were no real changes anywhere else on the pitch, because, you know, Parky seems to have his 11 that he likes, and, you know, bar injury or suspension, it very rarely changes from that. But that was one thing, particularly given the opposition. I think if it was a mid-table or a lower end of the table team, I could understand giving Luke the run at left centre back again. But you could quite clearly see, I think today is testament that experiment is over and shouldn't be addressed again.
Just reading through some of the messages that's coming through on the socials now, I don't think anybody does 180s quite like Sunderland fans, and I think we're all guilty of it. You know, last week Parkinson was, you know, kind of like a League One Guardiola, this, that and the other. He'd got us sussed in defence, and it looks like the tune has somewhat changed. Have either of your thoughts, you know, kind of differed or changed somewhat based on what you've seen this afternoon? Or do we just think it's again, perhaps still really early in the season where we shouldn't be making any sort of hasty decisions or any sort of massive kind of stances to say he's the right man, he's not the right man after so few games?
I'll give you my view on that, Craig. I think we can't be too knee-jerk, and we've got to, I went in writing earlier in the season that we have to give the manager and the team 6 or 8 games to get into their stride. But I did actually say in those pieces that that's got to include developing alternate players and alternate strategies. So yes, we're going to do a bit of a 180 because it's the first punch in the face we've had since the start of the season, apart from that daft bloody penalty against Bristol. So there's going to be some emotions, but we need to keep an even keel. The concern for me, just to pick on Bomber's point, to me it feels like we've rushed Willis back. He had a big bump on his leg, on his toe, whatever it was, and we forced him into the team, but we haven't put Flanagan back in when Flanagan was available before Willis was. Just building on your idea, Bomber, don't push your luck when you get away with it against middle to lower end teams in this league, because you take on a team that's playing very well away from home, and they're trying to prove themselves, and you're gonna get slapped, and that's what happened today. But we can't overreact to it. I agree. But now this is going to be the biggest test of Parky's endurance and flexibility and understanding and ideas, because he's got to get us back on the road.
Perhaps we've been somewhat fortunate that the results have been a little kinder today for us. A few teams above us have seemingly dropped points, and as you've both mentioned, we've got Tuesday to bounce back and hopefully lay this one to bed. But I think now is perhaps as better time as ever. Really, what we can do is we can look at the individual performances, discuss them. For those who haven't listened to this particular version of the ROKER Report pod, we expand basically on Jimmy Lawson's article and we rate the players out of 10. It's a very, very easy process. I will kick things off if it's all right with you two. Lee Burge in the sticks today. He's come in for a bit of a tough time, I think, this season, regardless of what he's done. He still seems to get an awful lot of criticism, perhaps just because he's not John McLaughlin. I think he actually done quite okay today. I think he made some decent saves. He was beaten by 2 pretty good finishes. Did show a bit of the corner, I think too much for John Marquis for the penalty, but I think I would give him a 6 out of 10. I think, again, the issue that we've had today is because Portsmouth have just come out the trap so quick, we just have not had time to settle, and it was seemingly reminiscent of that Bristol Rovers game. But the difference that we've had, of course, is where Bristol Rovers set back, Portsmouth just went for the jugular at times. But I think besides obviously the goals that he conceded, he was fairly solid, if unspectacular. Any variations on 6 out of 10 for Lee Burge?
No, not for me necessarily. Like I say, he didn't really do an awful lot wrong. He pulled off a couple of reasonable saves. His kicking was pretty decent. It was neither here nor there really. It was kind of pretty standard for me. I don't know about you, Malc.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when the goalie lets 3 in, it looks like a bad day at the office, but the whole defensive unit had a bad day at the office. And it could have been worse if it weren't for a couple of the things that Burge did. There was a really good clean-up he did about 75, 76 minutes where they were through. And he started to command his box, which is one thing I've been wanting him to do more of. So I don't think he can take the brunt of the challenge for the result today. 6 is fair.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that one of the talking points in recent weeks, people always say you're only as good as the defence in front of you. And the defence being superb in recent weeks, he's come for no praise. So I think if we are going to be poking faults, it's fair that they all seem to get it at the back. So, Malc, you mentioned Jordan Willis. You said perhaps he was rushed in a little bit too soon. What were your thoughts on him today?
You could see he wasn't match ready, in my opinion. The man's an absolute monster when he's on form. Up there with at least as good as, if not sometimes better than Bailey Wright in certain aspects of the game. I gave him a 3.5 for the first half, and I gave him a 3 for the second half. And I think Jimmy gave him a 4. I think that's generous. He was slack for the first Portsmouth goal. He gave Raggett a free header 15, 16 minutes in. Could have easily been a couple of goals down. And his touch was off. Just going back to the earlier point, 3 or 4 out of 10 is the best we can give him, which is a shame because he's a cracking player. But I just think he should have been on the bench. We should have gone with Flanners. We could have had '09 out wide right. We would have had Gooch as more of an attacking option. All of the things could have been different. But yeah, 4 to be generous.
It's as bad a performance I've seen Jordan Willis have since he's been at the club, and he's been phenomenal for us.
Agreed.
Let's be honest. But yeah, let's put it down to him being put back in too soon.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. I think it was natural that he was going to struggle with the pace of the game. If we kind of cast our minds back to last week, him walking around on crutches, there was that thought that he was going to be out there for months on end. So it was a surprise to see him get thrown back in today. So let's hope that is just a one-off. But I think Portsmouth perhaps done their homework on that, and they did seem to exploit him at times. Bailey Wright, he is essentially the glue, basically, of a bad defence today. Again, with Bailey Wright, you pretty much just get the consistent same, I think, every week. There was a couple of stray passes perhaps here and there. He made some crucial interceptions at times to basically keep the score reasonably level and respectable, and perhaps ensure that Portsmouth weren't out of sight. I know that Jimmy gave him a 7. To be honest, I can't think of many that were deserving of a 7 today. I've gone with a 6.5. We're going with the decimals this week. I've gone 6.5, and I can see you both shaking your heads. Perhaps I'm just that despondent and just really that knocked about this afternoon that I don't want to give anybody such a great score out of 10. But go on, I'll hand over to you two.
So I'm shaking my head, Craig, because I think 6.5 is probably a little bit too generous as well, to be fair.
Right, okay.
So, again, it is probably, maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh because we've lost the game and I'm just still annoyed that we've lost the game, but it probably is the worst game that Bailey's had since he's been at the club as well. I thought that the first 20-25 minutes he looked quite shaky. I do think he picked up, so I think I would probably be going kind of 4-5 first half and 5-6 second half. So I'm not too far away from your 6.5. I'm certainly nowhere near Jimmy's 7. I would give him a 6 because the second half he was able to get on the ball and one of the things that has been quite customary for him is to be able to play those long diagonal balls and find the wide players, and he actually did do that in the second half. But I was quite shocked first half, and like I said, that might be me just being angry at the result and the performance. But I don't know, Matt, what you think of that either.
So I'm with you, Bom. I wrote absolutely nothing down for Bailey Wright in the first half, and that's not Bailey Wright's performances, right? I had nothing to say about the man. And, I was waxing lyrical about this guy last week, Tuesday and last weekend. Second half, I wrote down, 2 or 3 good distributed balls from the centre backs that he played. So I had him 5s for both halves, if I'm honest with you. He wasn't at fault for the goals, so you can't give him too much for that. But, where he normally is the lifesaver and, the guy who puts that last ditch block in, he wasn't there for that either. So 7 I think is a push. 6.5 I think is closer, but I had him in the 5 range. He might squeeze 5.5 from me if he was lucky.
I think we've got just like such enormous expectations out of, say, Bailey Wright and Jordan Willis now, and we've described.
You've set their own bar very high. That's the thing, Craig. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So when you are going to have a day like today, then they are going to come under the scope. Christ, Luke 09 next. Malcolm, he did not have a good day at all. Luke 09, I'll hand the reins to you.
I mean, he had an okay first half. He did his job in a fundamental way, but again, I can't beat this lad up too much because of what we've said about Willis and Flanagan being available and rushed. In whatever order you want to put that. He had some good tackling at times, but. What Flanagan did sensibly the other week and got sent off to have a yellow card and result in a nothing free kick. 09's naivety in that position showed, and he gave away a penalty and got a red. That was always going to be pretty much the end of the game, I think, for us. So I give him a 5 in the first half. I give him a 3 for as long as he lasted in the second half. So I'd square that off as a 4. That 4 isn't pointed at him because we had people that should be playing that position that didn't. So I don't blame the lad for it.
Bomber, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm really reluctant to criticise him too much because it's an unnatural position for him. He's been thrown in there, and I don't know Luke 09, but from what we gather, he'll put his body on the line and do whatever is asked of him and give 110%. And I think he did that. I don't think anybody could accuse him of not giving 110% and not trying his hardest today. But he's just in a position where he's coming up against decent strikers, and he doesn't really know what to do. He almost gave the penalty away in the last game. So yes, okay, his performance wasn't great, but he's doing a job that's been asked of him, and he's just not got the ability to do it. The one thing I would say is I think he probably should have come off. It was quite clear that he got injured towards the end of that first half. And again, his character, he would play with one leg if he could. I would have liked to have seen a bit more from Phil Parkinson on the sideline and actually pull him off, because if he's going to ask O'Nien if he's okay, O'Nien's going to say, yeah, I'm fine. I would like to have seen him go, no, you're not okay. Off you come. Because that last 15 minutes of the first half, he could barely walk.
I think whilst we all, kind of celebrate and champion his versatility and his willingness, certainly it perhaps has cost him maybe today. And I think you're both right in that sense. He can't really be blamed. We signed an attacking midfielder who's played everywhere for us. I think he'd probably even go on goal if we needed to. So it's a bad day for him, but I'm happy to try and give him the benefit of the doubt, because as you've both rightly said, he shouldn't have been in there today. Moving on, Lyndon Gooch. Again, really, really kind of quiet there. I think besides that spell, in the first kind of 5-10 minutes of the second half, he really didn't do an awful lot. I think he conceded possession, bad areas where he was conceding possession at times, maybe tried a little bit too much. I've just gone for a flat 5 out of 10. Not sure if either of you agree or disagree.
I'd have him down as a 4, possibly. I thought he was poor. I thought his decision making was quite poor. I thought he was quite greedy and selfish at times, where he could have played a ball into other people, and he's just decided to cut in and carry on running. Ended up losing the ball. So yeah, I don't make an awful lot of notes on the games, but one thing that I did note was that I thought Lyndon Gooch was quite selfish today in some of his attacking play, and he lost the ball, and we got caught out a few times because of it.
Yeah, I mean, 5's fair. I had the same score myself. I mean, he went from glory to rubbish in minutes. I mean, that step over thing that he did in the first half, whilst it was a little bit selfish, Bomber, I agree, it shows what he can do, in when he's in a tight spot. But then, he gave the ball away in the second half about 65 minutes in. He had a shot on the edge of the box in the 70-something minute where, we went wide, and he took a heavy touch and then drilled it into Rose Head, He's got better quality than that. So yeah, but then he had some good defensive work as well, and he was busy, which Gooch always is. So I think 5's reasonable. He wasn't our worst player this week by a long way.
Grant Ledbetter, he had I think a bit of a difficult afternoon, perhaps arguably at fault for at least the second goal. Malc, what did you think of his performance this afternoon?
I was really hoping you wouldn't give me Grant Ledbetter, Craig, if I'm honest with you.
I know, literally, I'm just going down the list and I've give you Luke O'Nien, I've give you Grant Ledbetter. Jesus Christ.
No, I'm a big fan of Grant, but he was just outclassed today, in my opinion. He was slack with possession earlier on. He gave the ball away a couple of times in the first half, especially for the second goal when we went 2-1 down on the 25th, 26th minute. He lost the ball again before half time, and I wrote down nothing for him in the second half. I was hoping that he'd get a rocket at half time, and he knows how this game works. He's an experienced professional. But he, to be fair to the guy, maybe he's blown all of his gaskets in the last few weeks, and he just wasn't at the races today. But I gave him a 3.5. I don't know, I can't remember what Jimmy gave him. I think he might have given him a 4. I
think I
gave him a 5 actually. Yeah. But I'm when people are fantastic, which that guy has been for the last 2 or 3 weeks, they deserve their plaudits. If they have a bad game, then take it on the chin. And he knows that he could play better today, I think. So, 3.5, 4 at a push would be me.
Absolutely. I think one thing that we perhaps could have done is maybe take him out the firing line on Tuesday, going against Crewe. It's a lot of football he's had to play over the course of the past couple of weeks, and the impact that he has had, I think it's worth noting that when he first came in at the side, everybody was, kind of humming and hawing, saying he's finished, his legs is gone, and I don't think that's the case. I just think, unfortunately, today he's had a tough time like everybody else against a good, energetic side, and they had our cards marked from the offset, so I was kind of firmly in the camp of wanting to at least not go in too harsh on him, but we'll move on. Josh Scowen, what did you have for Josh Scowen, Bomber?
So I've got him as a 4.5 maybe. I thought again, he's another one who's been decent in possession the last couple of weeks, but he gave the ball away an awful lot today. There was a couple of silly fouls that he gave away in our third of the pitch. I don't remember him doing an awful lot, which kind of shows what his performance was really. So I think, very, very middle of the road, probably lower than average. So yeah, probably a 4.5 for me.
I've got nothing else to add on that, to be honest with you. I think Jimmy pretty much nailed it, saying that he picked a bad time to have his worst game in the Sunderland shirt. And I think it was just that particular afternoon, wasn't it? Just literally nothing seemed to work for us. Poor set pieces, some bad passes. But yeah, I would pretty much echo your sentiments there. Max Power. Yeah. Sometimes I can't get away with Max Power. I'll be honest with you. I'm not really sure what exactly he brings to the team. And again, it was one of those showings again today where I think we see that performance more often than not than, the performances that we should be expecting from a captain, from your so-called leader in the team. I just can't remember him doing anything at all. Literally, in terms of my notes, I have just a blank space. I mean, I'm not sure if you've got anything to add, but again, it was a 4, just a flat out 4.
Yeah, I would agree, Craig. I mean, I wrote down great intercept on the 87th minute. What has he been doing till now? And that's exactly what it says on my piece of paper. Because, like you say, he's a skipper. He should be leading from the front, especially when the chips are down, I had him at a 4.5. He did nout, really.
You could pretty much write the same review for all three centre midfielders today, couldn't you?
Yeah. With different criticisms, but yeah, I agree.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think we've bullied the midfield enough. Denver Hume. We'll touch on Denver now. I really like Denver Hume, mind. I think he's had an excellent season so far. Very direct in his running. Of course, he's still got a few bits that he needs to finish off to become, pretty much the finished article for us. I was giving him a 6 out of 10. I think he caused a lot of problems for their back line at times in the odd few times that we did cross into their half. So I give him a 6 out of 10. Yeah. I'm not sure if either of you agree or disagree with that one.
I'd say he was if we were to have a man of the match today, I think he would be it. I think anything good that happened for us today, the few things that were good that happened because of Denver. Obviously, he got the assist for the goal. He cut inside and drove into the box a few times and was unlucky getting shots away. He got that couple of really good crosses in, which White didn't get onto the end of. So yeah, anything good that happened today came as a result of him. So because of that, I'd probably give him a 7. It was just a shame that the other players couldn't match him for that.
I'm probably with you, Bomber, if I'm honest. Showed good control. He was one of the only real positives in that early 10-15 minutes where we went behind. 46th minute he had a go. Cracking tackles, a couple of times. Fair enough, he gave the ball away, but he was by far the least susceptible for that criticism today. He lost the ball by having a try rather than losing the ball by being sloppy, which is different for me.
That's good. Well put, Mark.
Yeah, so yeah, I would have given him a 7. I thought 6 from Jimmy on the website was probably a little bit harsh, and he was up there. I agree, Bomber.
Chris Maguire. Now his performance has seemed to have split a few people down the line on social media. I've seen people ranging from saying that he was probably one of his better games for us this season, and then on the other hand, people have just said, "What on earth did he do today?" So I'll throw that one out to you, Bomber. What did you think of Chris Maguire's performance this afternoon?
I think that the split opinion pretty much sums up his performance. He did some really, really good stuff, and he did some stuff where you think, why are you doing that? And then there was some times where he was anonymous, but that's Chris Maguire. You get that from him pretty much every game, but you don't. No one picks up on it when he gets on the score sheet or wins a penalty or something else. I thought when he was good, he was very good, but it was a little bit few and far between. Certainly not the best performance we've seen from Chris Maguire, but it wasn't. He certainly wasn't anonymous. So a 6 or 6.5, I think would be fair for me. Because like I said, I just want to see him get involved in more and not be anonymous quite so often. But like I said, the good things were very good. So he's one of the few that can escape a lot of criticism for me.
Right, Charlie Wyke again. We talk about people who splits opinion. Malcolm, what did you think of his performance?
I've got all the crackers today, haven't I? Thanks a lot, Craig. Tell you what.
Stitched him right up.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know who feels worse, the bloody team for that result or me for the criticism of him. So the first half, he got about a bit, right? One of the upsides, and let's look for a couple because the lads, need a bit of that now and again, in my opinion. Did Wyke do so many Charlie Wyke fouls today? No, he didn't. Right? he gives the ball away a lot in the game by trying to hold it up and just kind of not being very good at doing that sometimes. So I gave him a 5 for the first half. He took that goal quite well in front of the defender to get us back to 1-1. You know, that was probably the last point in the game where I was quite optimistic about what was going to happen. He should have scored in the 50-something minute. He got a header that he's got to put on target. You know, he's a target man. He's got to put a header on target. So, you know, I thought his second half performance after we'd gone behind was quite lethargic. Again, you know, what jumped out for me was John Marquis is a big old lummox, right? But look at the movement he had compared to Charlie Wyke. You know, and if that's the kind of player that we should have, then why is that guy starting every week? He's having the odd tap in, he's getting the odd kind of OG that he gets credit for. But yeah, 4 out of 10 for me. Probably a 5 at a push because he got the goal, but very intermittent would be the summary for me.
Yeah.
Phil Parkinson described him pre-match as very energetic. He said that often we don't see the things that he doesn't do, perhaps, you know, maybe things behind the scenes. And I was just thinking like that, surely it's not the same player. I don't, religiously want to stick the boot in, but I honestly can't see what we get out of Charlie Wyke. Granted,
No,
yes, he scored today, he scored a couple of season, but if we're pinning our hopes on getting promoted, you know, he's not the guy, really, is he, to be relying on. Like you've said, if you want someone, if you want a big, you know, kind of lump up front to lob it to, it has to be someone like John Marquis with that, just with that knack of being able to, you know, to kind of throw people off and chase things down and press. And I just don't see that with Charlie Wyke.
Yeah.
He seems so easy to play against. Like, League One defenders must love playing against him because he's literally square with his back to goal, maybe chest the ball down, and time after time when he did control it and didn't lose it, he was driven backwards. So, and we're playing back. He's playing back into our own half, back to Willis and O'Nien and Bailey Wright. There was two moments as well which no one's picked up on yet. There was just before halftime and just after halftime. There were 2 loose balls which he should be busting a gut to get onto the end of, and I would argue that he could have got on the end of at least one of them, and he just didn't bother. He just let it run through to the keeper, and the keeper picked it up quite comfortably. Yeah. At least chuck your body at it, and he just looked like he couldn't be arsed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and you know, what else can we say about the guy? He's the kind of paradox that a lot of Sunderland fans just don't understand, isn't he? You know, but yeah, where are the goals going to come from? Is the question, you know, because the guy's just not cutting it. And even when he has a day where he has a goal, you know, he doesn't follow that up with a rounded performance. So
the 2 substitutes that will be finishing on, Will Gregg, if anybody remembers, just unearth who he is. I couldn't believe that we actually seen him come off the bench today. What can you say? Again, it'd be quite easy to lay in and, you know, kind of say, well, he's missed his chances here on out and this, that and the other. But I don't even think it's fair to give him a rating. If you've got somebody like Will Gregg who does not get in the team, you know, and then when he does and he's getting 5-10 minutes here, I think it would be really unfair and kind of undeserved to be sticking the boot and to say, well, he's missed his one chance that he's got. I honestly don't know who he's huffed or what he's done, but, you know, surely we've got to try and get something out of him. He's on big money. We spent big money to get here to bring him into the club. So you'd think at one point he's going to get a run in the team. And I mean, he got himself into an all right position. He was unfortunate, obviously, to miss that. Relatively quiet otherwise, but like I said, I mean, if I was going to be rating him, obviously we start normally by 6 as default, but it'd be unfair to really say anything about him today. I think I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't necessarily give him a rating. I think it's complete. There will be people who will criticise the 20 minutes that he had and be like, "Oh, see, told you Will Gregg was finished, etc., etc." Somebody who's played such little football, expecting to come on up front for the last 20 minutes of a game when pretty much everybody on the pitch has been playing so poorly, you can't judge him on that whatsoever. And I think it would be unfair to. So yeah, I wouldn't give him a rating at all. I just feel a little bit sorry for him.
I would agree. He came on 70 minutes. 09 went off on 82, so he had 11 and a half minutes to do something, right? And you know, on the 78th minute, I wrote down, he had a good chance with a header that he put wide. We're not playing to his strengths. You know, Steve's, the Stato man's written a lot about that. Until we're playing a game he can benefit from, and until he gets more minutes, then, yeah, can't really say much more.
Absolutely. Again, if I think we're being fair and not awarding ratings out, probably the same for Danny Graham. Didn't really get enough time to do much today. So we'll probably wrap it up just there. Again, thank you very much if you've managed to withstand the half an hour of misery of us three talking and moaning on. I think it's probably fair to say that afternoons like this won't come too often this season. We've just got to ensure that we beat the lesser teams around us, and that's where obviously we've fallen at those hurdles in recent years. So hopefully we can get back to winning ways come Tuesday. So again, thank you very much for listening.